feast is here, 'tis time of year, when all the bounty triumphs fear. The feast is here, the time of year, when all the bounty triumphs fear. Well, one of the things that I like the most is the movement towards transcendence, where presence is more exciting than the nuances of language. And I think that that comes across here, where the tension, right, the nitpicking and all of that is about language, right? But the enjoyment is about presence. And I think that Lazaris does a terrific job of often transcending very wordy programs with a sense of presence. So let's get in and look at, can we enjoy this experience being tension, conflict, putting together puzzles around words, and enjoyment. Now, I preface this with saying that I'm delighted that Lazaris exists. And I would say that most of my tension with Lazaris comes in the juxtaposition of hyperbole with kind of statistical reality. And by statistical reality, I mean, having attended, dozens of workshops and, purchased tens of thousands of crystals and met plenty of other people who've worked with Lazaris for decades, never meeting anyone living even kind of close to the hyperbole that kind of is the upper side of Lazaris's framework, which should be within that framework of desire, imagination, and expectation. I think that Lazaris has created more imagination, more desire, more expectation for those upper limits than a good number of people or entities on the planet. So that should be leading to some of that upper limit experience, and I just don't see it. So let's look at the gaps, because I'm going to kind of share what Lazaris shares, their language, and then I'm going to share the language that I would use that would eliminate the tension, meaning that there's a tension between reality and what Lazaris is saying in both my own life and every Lazaris person that I'm aware of. There's that tension, and yet right, the reality of Lazaris and experiences and workshops, I think, are perfectly worthwhile on their own without the hyperbole. So you chose your parents in order to have experiences you need to grow. I would change that to one, just acknowledging the tension between, Lazaris has been a big proponent of getting rid of things like no pain, no gain. Right, but then he says, but you created all these painful experiences, right? And so I think some of that tension needs to be kind of worked out and talked through. But the biggest thing is just there's such an inflation. Like, let go of the you, right? Since no Lazaris friend I've ever met, including myself, has even had one memory of choosing the parents. And you should, I think, reference the conscious mind of the person, unless you want to get into the soup, right? If you want to get into the soup and the swamp, you just go around telling people what they did and what they didn't do for the reasons they have, no recollection of. You just go up to your neighbors and say, you did this and this because you wanted to upset me, right? That's how you get into the swamp, is you project yous that the other person has no awareness of, and so that takes us outside of kind of self-referencing into a world where Lazaris is the only authority. Because if you start telling people why they did what they did that they have no recollection of, you put yourself in an authority position rather than just asking people, like, did you choose your parents? Not that I recall. Okay, well, let's leave it at that. Let's look at the next one. So you can have it all. Lazaris has said this many times. And like any truth or any language, you can certainly come up with bits and pieces that could support that. Like, you can have it all could be interpreted, for example, to mean you have all that you have, right? Certainly you have what you have, and you can have all of that. But I think that, the way that I heard this is, if you want to be wealthy and respected and happy and, have people like you and have the kind of lovers and friends that you want to have, doing the kinds of things that you want to do, and you want that, to happen, with grace rather than happening with struggle and, insanity and all that, you can just have all of that. Obviously, the gap being enormous between that and, and our lives, right? So, I've had days, right, where I feel like I have it all. Maybe I've probably about 4 days is kind of the most that I've had of most of that, right? Exploring new lover experiences and lover cocoons. There's certainly a tremendous dimensionality in a sense of having it all. But, even on the edges of that, like, oh, what do you mean you've got a boyfriend that you didn't tell about this? That's not very good. That's not having a lot of integrity, is it, right? So even in those moments of feeling of it all, it's like there's stuff around the edges that, I don't want to be supporting you cheating on so-and-so. I didn't know that this was going, So that's not having it all, is it, right? There's that feeling, but even in those peak moments, there's stuff around the edges that isn't at all, right, the way that I would define it at all. And then most of life is a joke compared to having it all, right? Waking up with a headache, 3 or 4 things on the day that I really would rather not do, but I've got to do those things so that I can do these things, right, that I want to do, right? I've got a role here to play. I've got to do this and this consistent with my role. And that's not at all having it all. So I would, give that about a 10% mark, meaning you can have it all. Yeah, there's about 10% truth in that relative to, any of the realities that I see out there. And that extends to, people that are considered having it all, right? I was just watching a Beyonce, documentary, and it's but struggle and pain and grief and a lot of coordination and all that. And you can have all that, right? But big gap. So next thing, you create it all, right? You create your own reality. No ifs, ands, or buts. You create it all. Well, it's what is your reality, right? Because, on the one hand, all that we know of reality is what we think and feel and sense, right? That's all we know of our reality, right? And we make it up, right? In our mind, we create a virtual reality in our mind to help understand the vast amounts of sensory data out there. And it's just, we make all that up. But do we create the reality? Well, again, we're back to that, who is you, right? If I ask you, how did you create the Brooklyn Bridge? How did you create the dam here? How did you create the nuclear thing here? You're not going to be able to give a cogent explanation. So we're not talking about the right you, right? If Lazaris wants to address life, like to say that you are a part of life, and life creates it all, right? Well, even does life create its own reality in terms of the positives without the negatives? No, right? Life expands in all directions. So there's a tremendous amount of pain. There's a tremendous amount of healing. There's a tremendous amount of growth. There's a tremendous amount of stupidity. There's a tremendous amount of cruelty, right? So again, people wanting as a general goal to have more sustainable well-being and less chronic and unnecessary suffering, you create it all, right? Even if as a part of life, right, you create it all. Well, it's, right, that's not the small you that you need to be referencing as, your decisions on a daily basis. So, a little bit grandiose. We are not your guru. We are not your teacher, right? We are your guru. If you want a guru, we are your teacher. If you want a teacher, we're not your parent. We are your parent, right? If you are if you have been traumatized, then part of you is dissociated in a regressed place. That regressed part of you in a dissociated place projects parent on any respected authority, including Lazaris. So we are your parents in your reality, and we are your teacher in your reality. And frankly, most of what we do fits more in the kind of designation of teacher, parent, guru than friend, right? We don't hang out and have ice cream. You have to pay to interact with us. And so, that's not what friends do. Friends hang out, they share topics of conversation, right? And other than prostitutes, you don't have to pay to be friends, right? But you do have to pay to be friends with us, right? So we are your teacher, we are your guru, or whatever you make us to be if you actually cede us the responsibility to create our experience in reality. And frankly, most of the Lazaris friends are interacting with Lazaris as a parent, as a teacher. There's an anxiety about breaking the taboo, disagreeing with Lazaris. You don't have that with your friends. Name the friend that you would not disagree with on any point and be worried about, having a different opinion about. Well, you can't even legally have a different opinion with Lazaris according to Concept Synergy's user agreement, right? You don't even have the right to free speech, right? That's not what friends do. Before you can be friends with me, just sign here, right, to have access to Lazaris and sign away all your freedoms. So huge gap there. The 1990s is the most monumental decade in the history of humankind, right? Well, you can say that about every decade, can't you? Because one decade builds on the next, and as certain things potentiate, as things become more complex with time and over time, right, what you build on the last thing is more complex, is more potentiated, more potent than what was there before. So every decade, right, every decade in the history of humanity, in the history of Earth, right, back when slime was slime and then what sea urchins crawled out of the water, I mean, that was the most monumental decade of life, right? It just, now they're out of the water, right? Big things will happen in the next billion or so years. So you can say that with everything. You can also, you look back and you say, this was it? Like, we're in the 20s. AI is beginning to blossom, there's all kinds of interesting things happening from World War III is on the horizon, the transcendental moment of the global AI, right? The age of abundance is on the horizon, right? Where robots are working 24 hours a day for less than minimum wage and producing more and more things for more and more people, right? So there's a big, there's a lot going on right now. And obviously there's more. Time is speeding up. Lazaris is correct. So there's more going on in the 20s than there was in the 1990s. So why that? So why that, Lazaris? Right? Why not just let it be that every moment in history is the most monumental moment for that person, right? Because you're there. It's certainly the most monumental to you, and you certainly don't want to be in in the year 4000, saying, but back when they spoke English, before mind melding, before AI, before this, before that, that's the most monumental time. We should be studying the 90s. No, that's looking at, in the rear view mirror, right? So I would disagree with the hyperbole there. We love you more than you can know, right? We love you more than you can know, right? Yes, no doubt, right? That's true, I think, with, guides, with higher self, with presence, with fairies, with God got us all that is, right? That's all true. But we specifically love you more than you can know. Again, yes, there's truth in that. But there's also a lot of areas that we could know that Lazaris isn't loving, right? Lazaris doesn't give cuddles. We could know that, but Lazaris doesn't give cuddles, right? There's also gifts, right? The 5 love languages, gifts, right? Romantic gifts. Lazaris doesn't give romantic gifts, right? So we could know that, but Lazaris, can't be bothered to do that, right? Then there's acts of service, driving there. We could know that, right? Lazaris is a we that's channeling less than 1% of themselves into the physical plane, right? So they could have, by that standard, they could have at least 100 channels, and some of them could be driving us to the airport or, doing various things that would, like, gee, gosh, my channel drove me to the airport. I feel really loved, right? So there's a tremendous amount of stuff that could be loving, right? That we would experience as more love than paying to listen to a lecture, but Lazaris is just not doing that. So that's, that's something that, I would kind of frame in terms of if you go to a lover, right, and you haven't picked them up at the airport, you were busy for that, you haven't returned their calls, you tell them to get on a 2-year waiting list. You gave them a bill for your last interaction. You didn't pay your bill, we can't have more interactions. And then you say, but I love you more than you could ever know, right? Well, that's because I don't have enough money to know all of those things, right? I mean, maybe something could be arranged, at the right price, but I just don't have the money to pay for all of these ways that you'd like to love me. And I think that's a useful just counterpoint to that, right? It's not that I don't feel loved and I feel small, or, when Terry Clancy was having his, meltdown, who knows what's going on right now, about feeling betrayed by Jach and concept synergy and Lazaris and all that. A good hug, a proper retirement bonus, could have made a big difference. It's just Lazaris is choosing not to engage in those areas where an ego, where an I, really appreciates being loved. We love you. We are here for you. We will never abandon you as long as there is light. This is, again, because a lot of my critique is in the grandiosity of it all, right? It's not that Lazaris does not offer a tremendous amount of value for certain people in certain ways at certain times and certain forms, right? That's obviously the people who have paid over lots of money are voting with their feet to say, I value this. And while some of them would backtrack that later, right, is often the case. I've met many Lazaris friends that say, I wish I hadn't spent all this money on crystals. They're overpriced. I can't sell them. I need to retire. I don't have, and so, there's certainly some backtracking of that, but no one is going to, I think, argue that some people, have a high value of some of their interactions with Lazaris. But, that is tempered, right? If we think about, Lazaris talks about bountiful giving and this and giving of who we are and all of these things, and just, to But, the reality is if you don't have another $600, right, to pay concept synergy so that you can watch your spouse watching Lazaris, like your spouse plops down $600, right? Well, we'll put it on the credit card or do this, right? Your spouse plops down $600 to buy a portal to this friend, right? The only friend that requires payment, and is watching the thing, and you go over, hey, what are you doing? Oh, don't look at it, right? You're out of integrity, right? Jack needs another $600 so that you can be friends with Lazaris too, right? So, let's be clear, like it's out of integrity for a married couple in their own home. They have to get a separate monitor, right? Right? Go up, buy another monitor because you've got to have your personal relationship with your friend, right? And $600 a pop to listen to stuff, whether it works or not, right? Because there's no accountability. You buy something at many places, and they talk about all this. It's gonna 4K, blow your mind. This, and the thing doesn't work. You plug it in, it doesn't get right, and you get a refund. You take it back. This is not working, right? Well, try and take a Lazaris seminar back. There are no refunds for that, right? Hyperbole up the wazoo, right? It's like the greatest thing, the most monumental of this and that. And if you pay this, you get to be a map maker, a shining one, a light of this, and that you get to buy overpriced crystals and all that. But, you can't get a refund. Hey, I saw that crystal for 10, it was 1/10 the cost. 1/10 the cost, the same thing. I want this crystal. Well, you can't, no refunds, right? No refunds on friendship. So, a little bit of hype, it would be nicer to say, look, Jack's trying to make as much money as possible on this. You don't mark up crystals 10 times otherwise, right? It's a captive market, right? You're in an open state, right? So you're in that state of feeling all this liminal possibility, right? And so you're going to be willing to pay more, and you don't have the other crystals there at 1/10 the cost, right? So, so we love you. We will never abandon you. But if you don't pay the $600, you can't even talk to a screen, right? Let alone have a nice one-on-one conversation, right? So, and again, right, you can always find the points, right? You can do that with Christianity. Watch a fundamentalist Christian talk about the way that Jesus is testing you. Like God is doing this because he wants to see who his real friends are, right? You can do that and come up with a way that this all makes sense, right? And that is the way we can create our own reality, right? So, all the fundamentalist Muslims, all the fundamentalist Christians, all the fundamentalist scientists, they're all constructing, right, a version of reality. And so certainly you can create a reality where Lazaris is always there. They never abandon you. I can do that too, right, with my wife. I can say, honey, I know I'm not here and you can't visit me without paying me, right? Like, your friend paid me $600. She can come in, but you didn't, right? Now, I'm always here for you as long as you pay the $600. But if you don't want to pay the $600, you can just imagine my essence, right? You can talk to me in your mind. I'll be out having sex with other people, but you can talk to me you can have sex with me in your mind anytime you want. Right? I'm not bound by time. I'm not bound by space. I'm a multidimensional being. Right? So I'll be off having sex with your friend, and you can have a personal relationship with, I'll never abandon you. I've just got to go, right? The evening's getting on. So you can do that. I just don't think the hyperbole, the betrayal, the sadness, the anger, the grief that, unhappy, traumatized Lazaris friends are feeling, right, is not, it sounds hollow, right? and the lonely feelings of your wife sound, it sounds hollow. Like they can imagine having sex with you anytime when you're off with their friend. It can be done, right? People can pull that one off. But, it's statistically speaking, it's not a great move. Our techniques work. You always get what you want. If our techniques don't work, you didn't want them to. Lazaris goes into that with the 33-second technique. If you do his 33-second technique, in 3 days, you should see very clear movement, right? So if you want, whether it's you want $1 million, you finally want someone to love you, or you want your dog to heal from cancer, or you want something, right, that isn't happening, and you want that, and you should see signs within 33 seconds. If you don't, well, it's not that our techniques didn't work, it's you didn't want it, right? And again, it would be great to be Best Buy, right? Sell a laptop, right? This has, Pentium, this processor, this and that, the other, right? Sell a laptop and say this works, right? But not if you don't want it to, You press the power button, didn't turn on. Well, mine turned on, yeah, because you wanted it to. You didn't want it to. Yeah, I think I'm going to report you. I think I'm going to report you to the, to the Agency of Consumer Affairs, right? Because everyone wants their laptop to turn on, right? That's never been up for debate, right? Everyone wants their laptop to turn on. They all want the screen to work, right? There isn't a single person that, plopped down $2,000 for a laptop and said, oh, good, right? I can feel self-pity because my laptop didn't work. I guess I'll reflect on that, and Best Buy can keep my money. No, everyone wants, right, their 33-second technique to work. I don't ever recall any one of them working once. But obviously, it would be the most popular technique in the world. If Best Buy advertises laptops that work and all you have to do is visualize for 33 seconds, there would be a line around the globe. All the people from India, all the people from China, they'd all be doing the 33-second techniques and getting free laptops if that worked, right? But obviously, it doesn't work, right? How many times have you done the 33-second technique today, right? If you can create realities, cancer cleared here, the neighborhood bully stops bothering you there with 33 seconds, it'd be the most popular technique in the world. Why get a job? Just visualize 33 seconds, money appearing magically, right? But it's not a very popular technique. Chances are, even if you've worked with Lazaris for 10, 20, 30 years, you didn't do that technique today. It's only 33 seconds. Why not, right? Well, one of the aversions that I have to it is the pain. Like, it's not fun to feel like your friend is lying to you. It's not fun to feel like there's never anything wrong with this craziness, but there's something wrong with me if a visualization in 33 seconds, again, didn't work. That's not very fun, right? That's not very fun. So, what I think is more real, right, and this I can buy into 100%, our techniques work some of the time for some people in some areas. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, right, I'm pretending I'm Lazaris here. What do we mean by that? Well, nobody has ever created world peace with 33 seconds, not in the history of humanity. Nobody has ever created the perfect lover or this or that, right? Not in, that's not the case, right? And even if you think you have, try being married with them for a few years and then say that's the perfect one, right? And, this is just not, so, but here, it can't hurt, right? Here's how it will work, right? You do a 33-second technique, or you do this or that or the other. Once you know what you want, your brain will start focusing a little bit more on it. Now, if you want world peace, right, well, you can certainly go to more peaceful places in the world if you want that as your personal reality, but that's really off the table. But if you can create this bit here, right, you'll notice things and you'll see a few more opportunities, and you'll probably be better off. Just notice it, try a range of techniques, because there's plenty of other techniques that work better in certain situations. Our techniques, right, that they're what they are. So notice them, try a wide variety of techniques from people and do what works, right? Look at the data. And if our techniques don't work, well, no technique works all of the time for all people in all situations. Find where here are a range of techniques. You decide and find which work for you. And if they don't, well, that's on us, right? We choose not to have a personal one-on-one with each person like a coach would, right? When I do coaching, I never say that my techniques work. I say, try this and let me know what happens. They try it, right? Now, 80% of the time, things get better. And 20% of the time, nothing happens. And, like 5% of the time, things get worse. And I don't throw that on my coaching friend, right? Or client or whatever. I say, that's on me, right? You're learning. We're learning together. Stop the one that isn't working. I'm not going to pretend this technique works. Let's learn together. So let's learn together what works, and we're not going to take the time to do that. We're Lazaris, right? We could, but we're not going to. We have infinite amount of time, but we're not going to use infinite amount of time. We're going to create artificial scarcity like everyone else does. So you do that, see if it works. If it doesn't work, well, get rid of it. If it's not changing much reality, don't try it at all. If you get really good results with it, keep it up. If not, let's try some other things. And if I'm not working for you, try some other coaches and try that, right? Because let's be honest, every human being in the history of humanity has wanted at some level to feel sustainably better and has wanted to avoid feeling chronically worse. Right? That's an innate drive in humanity, right? It's what everyone's doing. And so if I'm not working for you, if you, more importantly, if anything's better, right? Nothing is perfect, but if you can find something better, do it. It's out there for sure. The question is, right, if it takes you 5 years to find it and this is working 70% of the time, would you be better off to not do something that's working 70% of the time so that you can find the perfect coach or whatever, right? There's a trade-off there too, right? So work with the things that you have, take them as far as they can go. And if you find anything that works better, bravo, go do it. You can end fear, pain, guilt, you can end fear, pain, and guilt completely from your life, right? You can end them, you can give them up, give up the payoffs, stop, just stop doing those things. And here's the techniques to do that. Well, right, show me a single Lazaris friend not doing guilt, fear, and pain. And sometimes you get crazy making, right? They get very defensive, right? No, don't look at that. No, because they feel they have to live up to that, right? You have perfectionists trying to say, no, I don't have any fear. No, right? But they're just so terrified of doing it badly, right, that you've actually created more guilt, more shame, more fear than before, right? So you haven't eliminated it. You've created a spiritual judge that you haven't eliminated it, right? Well, that's happening all the time in Lazaris land, right? And Lazaris friends, and it's happening all the time in the New Age. So what I would reframe that is, look, you're a human being. There's lots of things that will happen that you don't like. That's been going on for, ever since there were human beings, right? Name a single person in the history of humanity where things have happened always the way they liked, right? Now, so that's been happening. So things are going to happen you don't like. You're going to be traumatized. Lazaris even says it themselves on the crisis tape. He said, you are going to have crises, right? I thought, what about creating your own reality? Well, Lazaris does it both ways, right? You create it all, and you are going to have crises. But what if I don't want them? Well, you're going to have them anyway. But I thought I created it all. Well, Lazaris doesn't like resolving the conundrum, right? So you're going to have crisis, you're going to have this and that and the other. And generally speaking, a very rich human life, right? You're going to have some people you hate some of the time. You're going to have some people hurt you some of the time. You're going to hurt other people some of the time. Some people are going to hate you some of the time. It's going to be a big thing, and it's a rich life. They're each colors. They're states, right? And going from grief to joy, or birth to death, or death to birth, creates highlight. Just like an artist, you have blacks and whites and this and that. And you can't create great art. I mean, you can pretend in the modern age that an all yellow painting is worth $24 million. I mean, good luck with doing that again. But you can certainly pretend that. But great art, right? That we actually want to look at the thing back here, right? This doesn't look so white without all this dark stuff here, right? What if it was all just gray like that, right? It doesn't have any luminosity to it, right? These reds don't pop if it, doesn't have these dark browns here, right? So why are we doing that, right? Like, there's 256 million colors refracted on a computer chip, and an infinite amount otherwise. So all the colors bring contrast and life to all the other colors, all the human states. Right? There's going to be times you feel guilt, times you feel shame. However, right, if your painting is getting, all black, right, for too long, right, then, here's a technique to get rid of some of the black. Scrape off some of the black, throw it back in the bin, put some white on it, right, to make it a little bit more palatable. And these techniques may or may not work for you. Right? There's plenty of Lazaris friends who are depressed and who have been depressed for some time, right? Who'd like to have a little less depression, but on the depression red label series or this and this, and there's still a lot of depression, right? But try it. Find what techniques that work, right? If that doesn't work, try some other things. Like I find that travel is about 10 times better for depression than the red label series, right? So try other things. Do what works for you. And our techniques are not always the best, and they're not always the best for you all of the time, right? So that just tones it down, and then, give it a shot, right? I mean, obviously, if you've got 30 minutes and you can't travel and you've had some results with Lazaris before, even if it's a 10% cessation in depression and it takes 30 minutes and you got a Walkman, use a tape, fine. But forget about Lazaris altogether if you can go scuba diving or whatever, and it's much more fun than listening to tapes, and all that, right? So do what works. We will never abandon you. So, that's a pretty big thing, right? I would say that there's going to be times when, hardly, it's just very, very difficult to connect and help you feel loved at all because you're in so much misery, right? You're just lost your child, you just had this, you just had that. And, some people can open up in that state sometimes, right? In which case, it's not only Lazaris that won't abandon you, it's the whole universe and all that is and all your friends, right? There's other times you feel completely unloved and unlovable and this and that, and a statement like this doesn't mean anything. Basically, if you have the capacity to feel love and be beloved, you will feel the love of life and all that supporting you in ways. And if you do not, which there will be times when you do not, you will feel completely abandoned. Because abandoned is part of the human experience, and that's part of the wheel as you go through the whole cycle, right? The wheel is going to touch on that feeling if you're living a rich and full life. It doesn't have to linger there forever, but in that times, we will abandon you just as much as everyone else in your experience because you can't let anything in, and we're not willing and able to, that's the other piece of it. We're not able and willing to make it happen, right? Supposedly, we create universes. Supposedly, we could snap our fingers and you'd feel deeply loved in that moment. We're just not going to do it. right? So you're going to feel abandoned because we're not going to do what it would take to not have you feel abandoned, right? Because most of us, like I've felt abandoned and lonely and stuff in any number of times. And there's always a recipe where someone could help me to feel deeply loved in that moment. But that's not a recipe that anyone is able or willing to do at that time, right? I mean, most of the time you could come up to me and say, how loved do you feel? And I'd say, 5, let's say 5. Well, how could I make you feel loved at 10? Well, let's get started, right? You could listen to what I had to say here. We could talk about this for 3 hours. We could go out and do this, right? I can buy you a treat and you can buy me a treat, right? You can give me a neck massage here, right? It's a bit sore here. Now, what are we up to there? We're up to maybe a 7.5, right? Okay, what would it take to bring that up to a 10? Well, right? How long do you have to discuss that, right? We've got all kinds of ways to make that feel like you could do this and this and this and this way for this reason. Then I can do this and this and this, right? And it's getting better and better, right? And then you could say, let's do it again tomorrow, right? Rather than I'm busy, right? So it's not, and you could expect that, you could desire it, you could imagine it, but it does create pain when nobody does it. Right? So nobody in my entire life has ever done that. And I've done that for a few people because when you realize what you want, you realize the technique of giving that to other people. So I have several people have told me they felt completely and utterly loved just couldn't let any more. And it was the only time they've had that in their life. So I have given that gift. It takes a willingness, a commitment. It takes time. It takes observing their body. It takes observing their minds, right? And then they have that, but nobody's actually felt that and said, oh, I want to give that to you, and I'm going to do what you did to me. I'm going to ask you these questions, do this. And so it gets a little bit lonely, right? To say, well, I can engineer your perfect experience of love, and then you can enjoy it and pretend it's magic and all that, but no, I'm just engineering it, right? And just like a Disney cartoon, that magical feeling. No, that's $200 million of people, doing this and this, and I could do this, and I have to discuss. No, that's not the story we're going to go with. That's $200 million of other people engineering things with very little magic and a lot of pen strokes, so that you have the experience of magic. And so I can give that to people, and I have enjoyed giving that to people at times. Presumably, Lazaris could too, but Lazaris doesn't choose to do that, right? When have you ever had a perfect souffle from Lazaris, right? That could be your love language, right? But that's not Lazaris's preference. We are talking directly and personally to you, right? Lazaris has said, we're not just sending tapes out and all that. We're talking to you, right? It's all about you. Well, much as I think every American likes to hear that, when you're dealing with cassettes and you don't have a tape player, that was all just for me, right? You did all that just for me, right? When you reference the crisis tape to somebody who wasn't born when there were tapes, right? That's for me. When the past has ended, but you're still talking about tapes, right? Meaning there's a lot that Lazaris could do, right? When you're talking about an executive and you've never been an executive when Lazaris is talking. So I would just, back that down a little bit. We talk about things that if you listen well, there's probably something on every tape, that at least has something to do with you. And, you may be Chinese, we're speaking in English. Well, obviously not ideal. But maybe there's some tones you enjoy, right? Probably some tones of voice you enjoy and plenty of other people as well, right? But, we're talking in a way that hopefully has something to do with you some of the time and don't deal with the stuff that's, that isn't you. And obviously we're not being as engaged as we would in a one-on-one dialogue. Let's just be real about that because that's not what we're doing. You create your success and the consequence of that success. You create your reality and the consequence of that reality, right? So, right, presumably I can spend all of my money. That would be a great success. Buying this thing, that would be a great success, and have even more money in the bank because I did that. If I program correctly using the Lazaris techniques, right? In Lazaris world, we don't spend our money and have less. We can spend our money and have more, right? We can buy hundreds of thousands of dollars of Lazaris crystals and have even more money than when we did that, right? That's right. That's a nice world to live in, right? But of course, you have to do the techniques right. So let's back that down to something that's relatable, doesn't ask you to go crazy in order to do it. Well, it's good to examine the dogmas in your culture. Right? There's a dogma that says no pain, no gain. Right? Now, did you go jogging today? I didn't feel like it. Well, if you did, right, well, it would have been uncomfortable. Right? I enjoy watching TV. So, there are some things that you need to spend some discomfort to have gain. There's other things you need to have pain to have gain. There's other things you don't need to have pain to have gain, right? You can have the gain of a laughter, right? You watch a comedy, you laugh, there's a gain, right? So, in other words, don't dogmatize everything. Reality is complex. So, you can suffer and help someone. Let's be real, right? They're in the mud, they're on the ditch, their car went down in the ditch, they're saying, help, help, right? Well, you can of course say, well, in my reality, right, they're an illusion, right? That's not my version of success. You can drive on, of course, right, and increase the sociopathic messages going on in your culture. Free to do that. You can also get out and say, well, I've got my shoes on, right? Well, they're in the mud. Right? I want to get my dress. Well, you have a choice to make, right? Do you help someone feel supported, and do you create a world where people feel that people have their back? Or do you create a world where it's very clear that in a moment of terror and trauma, and my car might blow up, that you, the special Lazaris friend, don't want to get your coattails dirty, and so, right? Or you could advise them to create their own reality, right? You create the consequences. You didn't need to go in the ditch, and if you went in the ditch, you didn't have to feel bad, right? You could have crashed your car in the ditch and felt great, created a reality and a different consequence, but well, you're feeling badly. So, let's just tone it down a little bit. There are vast arenas of reality where we would like to, I'd like to play around making love with my girlfriend and have lots of money arrive every day. It just doesn't work that way. If I want to go have that lots of money, well, I mean, and it's not black or white, right? If you're a YouTuber, maybe you can do that, right? It's complex, right? But can you do that if you don't have a camera, right? If you're in Vietnam without a camera, or you're in, there's no Wi-Fi, well, you can't do that one there, right? So, well, can you get a visa over here? Well, America doesn't like poor people. Basically, if you're poor, you can't get a visa to America, is what it boils down to. It's easier to import a dog than a poor person into the United States. And so, well, so just look carefully at the situation and examine, does it actually need to be? Like, if you're in a nice pair of clothes and someone's in a car accident in the mud, you are going to have to get muddy. Not overly. Maybe you don't have to fall on your face, but you're going to, get some mud on your shoes to do that. And so why muddy that clarity of reality up by pretending that you can step in the mud without getting muddy, So I think that's just a disservice, that contributes to the bitterness and frustration. So I would just say that look carefully at the situation and see what the price has to be paid. Like if you're at a hot dog stand and you want a hot dog, and you want a reality where you have a hot dog but don't pay the vendor, well, you can steal it, right? And you want a reality, okay, I stole the hot tub, I didn't want that, right? Stole the hot dog, I'm walking away. What are those police doing? I didn't want that. Get away from me. I'm doing my 33-second technique, right? Well, get real, right? It's the hyperbole isn't necessary to just bring into focus that we don't have to have it play out the same way all the time. Maybe there's no police around and you just walk away with your free hot tub and an angry hot dog person, or maybe they throw mustard at you. But, try and imagine what it's like to be the hot dog person and then you realize they'd want to be paid, right? And so it's not the easiest thing to do. You can, of course, create the reality where you go around having sex with people, without a condom, and everyone praises you, and nobody is annoyed, that you didn't do this. But how likely is that, right? How many times is that working? So you truly are changing, evolving, and growing. So all life is changing and growing. The reality in my life is certain things get better and other things get worse, right? I noticed, I was achieving all these goals, but I was feeling tighter and more bitter, right? So I had all these goals, but I was feeling tighter and more bitter, right? So changing, evolving, right? But there's usually, something gets forward and something goes back. Right now, we're at a big stage where the United States as a global power, as a global empire with the world reserve currency, is slowly shifting towards China, right? Ray Dalio has done some very good work tracking the rise and falls of empires. That has very real consequences for Americans having the world currency, right? So it could be fine to say we can spend $8 trillion terrorizing other countries while fighting terror, right? But hey, if you want to do that, and then have more money in the bank and no debt, right? No national debt, right? We'll borrow money, right, to fight a feeling, terror, by terrorizing people and bombing innocent weddings. And all. That's what we'll do, and then we'll win that wonderfully. We'll win it. And then we'll have more money in the bank than ever before. Well, that doesn't seem to be the way that it's working, right? Can we sell our debt? Do people want to buy more of our debt so that we can go and fight we lost the war on drugs, the war on human beings. We lost the war on terror. There are more people angry than us than before, right? We lost the war in Afghanistan. I've now got more. Anyone want to loan us some more money for more of this, right? So, of course, there are consequences, to these things, and we're all changing and growing. But, we've got the best drones we've ever had, right? And we're deeper in debt than we've ever been, right? I've got more conscious and I've got more snarky in the last 10 years. I didn't used to be snarky before my therapist sexually abused me and did a whole number on all of that, right? I didn't used to be as sarcastic until I discovered, the massive, employee dysfunction and abuse at Concept Synergy, right? And Lazaris, zip, right? Mum's the word. Don't ask, don't tell is Lazaris's policy at Concept Synergy. We're all told the endless hyperbole, but the reality isn't as pleasant. And I think it'd be far more interesting, frankly, if Lazaris did talk about all the dysfunctions at concept synergy as a reality check, and so that everyone doesn't believe it's only me, right? And, give us your pain. You can be done with it. Well, I think that's, reality is evolving. Reality is growing. And it's doing it with pain. It's doing it with joy. It's doing it with excitement. It's doing it with boredom. All of these things are part of life, part of reality. And reality is changing in response to all of these things. Having too much of one thing at one point, trade off some of that and get that is, I think, a good idea. The idea of having a pain-free life, I think, is delusional and not constructive, as it is to focus on how much pain can you deal with at this time, right? Can you deal with this pain at this time? No, I can barely get my homework done and keep this job. Okay, well, let's try and do that a little bit later, right? And you're not giving it up, entirely, but it's good to be able to manage it. Like, you've got some nuclear waste as a species, you don't know what to do with it. Let's put some of it in the ocean, let's put some of it here, let's try and put it somewhere that it at least stays stable until we can figure out what to do with it, right? Hopefully in the next 1,000 years, we'll be able to do something with our nuclear waste. Maybe Elon Musk will be able to take it into space as a constructive force, right? Nuclear waste to create, an asteroid defense. That could be useful, right? It's not doing anything for the fish as it's leaking out of the ocean. It's not doing anything in our mountains, right? Maybe we could actually use it to blow up asteroids that are heading towards Earth, right? So there's something that can be done about it. We just don't know what to do about it right now. And I think I'll close on the last and kind of perhaps most grandiose, that Lazaris is the highest resonance to ever touch the planet, that ever will touch the planet, that has ever touched the planet. And that the ultimate causation is resonance, right? Well, Lazaris numbers are in decline, meaning there are fewer Lazaris friends today than there were 10, 20 years ago, and people usually use things that work, right? There's 90% of businesses go out of business entirely, right? And they don't go out of business because they had the best technology. They go out of business because people don't want 8-track machines anymore, right? They want what? Downloads, streaming. They don't want 8-track, they want, right? So those companies are out of business. They're not out of business because they had the best technology, right? They're out of business because they didn't have the best technology, right? So you don't get to say we're the best of everything, but, all the concept synergy employees are, have mixed or, unpleasant memories and feelings about that, right? Fewer people come to our workshops, right? There's this, we need to have security guards, No, that's a tremendous amount of failure. Lazaris could have created the reality where they created the reality of the workshops and then they created the reality of no security guards. They create the success and the consequence of that success, right? You can tell that to Beyonce, right? You can create being famous with no security guard if you do our techniques, right? Or you can just do what everyone else does and get a security detail. Well, concept synergy got the security detail. Right? Why? Because Lazaris techniques work so well, or because they didn't, right? And so I just think that that's an unnecessary power grab. And what I mean by that is I can, of course, say the same thing. It's possible, I guess, in some vague version of reality that there's something, in me that's really important. It's possible. But I don't know that. You don't know that. You don't know if Lazaris is number 1, number 2, number 3. You don't even know if counting matters in any of those areas, right? You don't know if resonance is the ultimate causation because you don't know all the ways of causation, right? Is it the ultimate? You don't know. We are tiny, tiny brains. using language to compose a crude map of reality in a tiny point in time and space and all that. And the idea that we can evaluate the ultimate anything is a little bit absurd. But Lazaris saying that they're the ultimate anything is basically saying either you've just got to take our word for it, why do that? Or you've got to pretend that you can evaluate that, and you can't, right? Meaning the only person who thinks that they can evaluate the ultimate anything in the universe is a fool, right? They've been proven wrong. There have been tons of people, the ultimate this, the ultimate this, the ultimate this, the ultimate this. They're all wrong, right? We look back at the last 10,000 years, they're all wrong. And there will, of course, in the next 10,000 years be tens of people saying that they're the ultimate this and the ultimate that, right? Lazaris will be dead, or Jach will be, and all that. But why do it? Why do that, right? I would just say, look, we are a part of life. We're a part of reality. There are bigger parts than us and less parts than us. We're good for some things. We're terrible at other things, right? We're not very good at cuddling, right? That's the way it is. And if we can have a kind of a win-win interaction, let's do it. And if not, there's tons of other choices out there. Some that'll work better, some because of who you are and where you're at. That's something that I think everyone can respect and buy into. So, ciao.